A kingdom losing its mind. The wind hits you first, not gentle, not welcoming. It cuts across the English countryside like a warning, rattling banners against stone walls and whispering through the towers of a kingdom that no longer feels steady. The sky hangs low and grey, heavy with the kind of silence that comes before something breaks. England should feel powerful. It doesn't. Inside the great halls, beneath vaulted ceilings and flickering torchlight, men speak in careful voices and sharper glances. Nobles gather in corners, their words quiet but dangerous. Nothing is settled, nothing is safe. The crown still sits where it belongs, but everyone in the room is already wondering who it will belong to next. Because the king is not what they need him to be. Henry VI of England sits on the throne like a man borrowed from another life. Gentle, soft-spoken, a ruler who would rather kneel in prayer than command an army. His voice does not carry, his presence does not fill the room. And in a kingdom built on power, that kind of quiet is not peace, it's weakness, and weakness does not go unnoticed. You can feel it moving through the court like a draft no one can quite shut out. In the way men linger a little too long before bowing, in the way decisions stretch and are never truly made. In the way ambition begins to rise, not loudly, not yet, but steadily, like something waking up, waiting, watching. And then she arrives, not with thunder, not with steel, but with silk, ceremony, and the careful weight of expectation. Margaret of Anjou steps into England as a bride, her future already written for her by men who think they understand how this story will go. A queen meant to smile, to produce an heir, to stand quietly beside a king who cannot hold his own crown steady. She is young, foreign, surrounded, and underestimated. The court sees a girl wrapped in velvet and politics. They do not yet see the thing beneath it, but she does. She sees everything. She sees the way the nobles look at her husband, not with loyalty, but with calculation. She sees how power slips through the cracks of hesitation. She sees how quickly a crown can become a prize instead of a right. And somewhere, deep beneath the silk and ceremony, something in her sharpens. Because this is not a stable kingdom. This is a kingdom waiting to be taken. And if no one else will hold it together, she will. She learns quickly that a crown does not always come with power. In the early days, she plays her role. She listens more than she speaks. She watches the court like someone studying a map, learning where the danger sits, where the alliances bend, where the smiles don't quite reach the eyes. Men speak around her, over her, through her, as if she is decoration, as if she is temporary. And at first, she lets them. Because there is something more valuable than being heard too early. There is understanding. She notices who controls the conversations, who hesitates when the king falters, who steps forward just a little too quickly when decisions need to be made. And most importantly, she notices what happens when the king is expected to lead. Nothing. Silence. A room full of men, waiting for a command that never quite comes. Henry prays. Henry withdraws. Henry hopes the world will steady itself if he is gentle enough. But the world does not work like that, and Margaret knows it. You can almost see the moment it clicks into place for her, not all at once, not in some dramatic realization, but slowly, piece by piece. This kingdom is not being ruled, it is being left open. And open things get taken. So she adjusts. She stops waiting for direction. She starts asking questions. Careful ones at first, quiet ones. The kind that sound harmless until you realize they aren't. Who holds the loyalty of the northern lords? Why are certain men growing richer while the crown grows weaker? Why does the room change when certain names are spoken? And then, more dangerous still, what happens if no one steps in? Because if the king cannot hold the crown, someone else will. And when that happens, there will be no room left for a quiet queen. So she makes a decision. Not announced, not declared, but lived. If power will not come to her, she will move toward it. Not loudly, not yet, but deliberately. She begins to build relationships, to place trust carefully, to understand not just who holds power, but how they hold it and how quickly it can be lost. And the court begins to feel it. Subtle at first. A shift in the way conversations land. A presence that lingers just a little longer. A queen who is no longer simply observing, but beginning to shape the space around her. Some dismiss it. Some ignore it. Some don't notice at all. But a few, the dangerous ones, do. And they begin to watch her back. Because something is changing. The quiet queen is not staying quiet. And the kingdom that once ignored her is about to learn exactly who she is. The shift doesn't come with a trumpet. It comes with silence. A heavier kind this time. Not the quiet of hesitation, but the quiet of something slipping out of place. Because the king stops. At first it's small things. A conversation left unfinished. A question unanswered. A gaze that drifts just a little too far past the person speaking to him. Courtiers exchange looks, quick and subtle, the kind that vanish the moment they're noticed. But it doesn't pass. It deepens. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months. And Henry VI of England, the man meant to hold the crown steady, begins to disappear while still sitting on the throne. He does not speak. He does not respond. At times, he does not even seem to see. The court does not announce it. It doesn't need to. Everyone feels it, like a floorboard giving way beneath their feet. You stand in the great hall, and for the first time, it feels too big, too hollow. Men who once waited for the king's voice now fill the space with their own. Conversations stretch louder, sharper. Decisions begin to form without him. Not openly, not yet, but enough that the balance has shifted. Because a kingdom cannot wait forever. And when a king cannot rule, someone else will. For a moment, just a moment, the world tilts toward chaos. Then, a cry cuts through it. Sharp, new, alive. A child is born. Edward of Westminster. And suddenly, the air changes. Because this is no longer just a failing king. This is a future, a line, a reason for the crown to continue. You would think this would steady the court. You would think a son, an heir, would quiet the whispers, pull the kingdom back into line. It does the opposite. Because power does not like uncertainty, and uncertainty has just been given a name. The celebrations are grand, banners rise, bells ring, wine flows through the halls. But beneath it, the whispers sharpen. You hear them in corners, tucked between laughter and music. Too quiet for the queen to hear. Too dangerous to be said aloud. Is he truly the king's son? How could he be, when the king barely knows himself? It's not a question. It's a weapon. And it spreads. Margaret hears it anyway. Not the words, not at first, but the shift in the room. The way conversations stop when she approaches. The way eyes flicker toward the child, and then away again. She doesn't ask. She doesn't confront. She watches. And when she understands, when the truth of it settles into place, something inside her hardens. Because this is no longer about court politics. This is no longer about influence or presence or learning the rules. This is about her son. And the moment a child becomes a question, he becomes a target. She moves differently now, more directly. Less patience for pretense. Where once she observed, now she begins to act. She speaks more, decides more, places herself where she cannot be ignored. Not loudly, but firmly. Like someone who has realized that hesitation is a luxury she can no longer afford. And across the court, across the shifting alliances and tightening tensions, another man is watching. Not with panic, not with noise, but with something far more dangerous. Patience. Richard, Duke of York, does not rush forward. He does not shout his intentions. He does not need to. because where others see chaos, he sees opportunity. You catch glimpses of him in council chambers, in shadowed corridors, in the quiet spaces where decisions are made long before they are spoken aloud. Calm, measured, waiting. He does not need to create instability. The kingdom is already doing that on its own. All he has to do is be ready when it finally breaks. And Margaret, she sees him too. Not fully, not yet, but enough. Enough to know that the danger is no longer just around her. It is taking shape, taking form, standing in the same rooms, listening to the same silences, waiting for the same moment. The king cannot rule. The air is questioned. The court is dividing. And somewhere between the whispers and the watching, the first real line is drawn. Not in ink, not in law, but in intention. Because the question is no longer whether the kingdom will fracture. It's who will control what's left when it does. And for the first time, Margaret stops reacting to the court and begins preparing for it. Because if they are going to come for her son, if they are going to challenge his right to the crown, then this will not stay a quiet struggle. This will not remain a game of whispers. This will become something louder, something sharper, something that cannot be undone. War is not declared in a single moment. It grows, it breathes, it waits. And in the halls of England, it has just taken its first real step forward.
War doesn't arrive with a single shout. It creeps in, through raised voices in council chambers, through alliances that feel just a little too tight, through men who stop pretending they aren't choosing sides. And then, one day, steel leaves its sheath. The first clash feels almost contained, a skirmish, a disagreement turned physical, nobles testing the edges of power like men pressing on a cracked wall to see if it will give. But it does give, faster than anyone expected, because once blood hits the ground, it doesn't stay there. You hear it before you see it. The thunder of hooves, the clash of metal, the shouted orders that echo across open fields as banners snap in the wind. The Wars of the Roses are not declared like a formal war. They erupt, and once they begin, they don't stop. Men who once stood shoulder to shoulder now face each other across the battlefield. Colors matter now. White, red. Loyalty is no longer whispered. It is worn, and it is tested. At the center of it, a queen who was never meant to stand here. Margaret does not watch from a distance. She does not retreat behind stone walls and wait for news to arrive in sealed letters. She moves, across roads churned into mud by marching armies, through camps thick with smoke and tension, into rooms filled with men who are not used to being commanded by a woman. And she does not ask for permission. You see it in the way soldiers look at her at first, curious, skeptical, measuring, until she speaks, until she moves, until they realize she is not here to observe the war, she is here to shape it. Where others hesitate, she decides. Where alliances fracture, she binds them, tight, deliberate, sometimes desperate. She writes letters that move armies. She negotiates with men who would have dismissed her months ago. She stands in spaces that were never meant for her, and refuses to leave them. And slowly, reluctantly, the room adjusts. They stop speaking over her. They start listening. Because while the king fades further into quiet, the queen grows louder. Not in voice, but in presence. You catch glimpses of her in moments most never see, standing over a map, fingers tracing the path of an army that must arrive before dawn. Riding through the cold, cloaks snapping behind her as soldiers fall into line at the sight of her. Holding her son close, just for a moment, before stepping back into a world where softness is a liability she cannot afford. She is learning the rhythm of war, and it is not kind. Victory comes, sharp, bright, brief. A battle won, a city secured, a rival pushed back just enough to breathe again. And for a moment, it feels like control. Then loss follows. Quicker, crueler. A trusted ally falls, a plan unravels, a message arrives too late, and the ground shifts again beneath her feet.
This is the truth no one told her when she first stepped into England wrapped in silk. War does not care who deserves to win. It only cares who survives long enough to keep fighting. And Margaret, she keeps fighting. Across the chaos, across the shifting lines, across the men who rise and fall and rise again, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. This is no longer a war being fought around her. This is a war being held together by her. And even those who hate her, even those who fear what she is becoming, have to admit it. Without Margaret of Anjou, there is no resistance. There is no fight. There is no war at all. But war has a cost. It always does. And it is coming closer now, closer than before, closer than she can outrun. Because the battlefield is no longer just about land, or power, or crowns. It is about something far more fragile. Her son, the boy who was once a symbol, a promise, a future, now stands at the center of a storm that does not care how young he is, only how valuable. And in war, value is dangerous. Margaret feels it before she fully sees it, the way strategies shift, the way conversations tighten when his name is spoken, the way enemies stop circling the throne and start circling the air. This is the moment everything changes, again, because she is no longer just a queen fighting for a crown. She is a mother, fighting for her child's life. And there is nothing more dangerous than a woman with nothing left to lose.
The war changes when it becomes personal. Not in the way songs tell it. No swelling music, no clean lines between right and wrong. Just a tightening, a narrowing of the world until everything, every decision, every alliance, every risk points back to one thing: her son. You see it in the way Margaret of Anjou moves now. Less patience, less mercy, no wasted motion. Where once she balanced power and survival, now she chooses survival every time, his survival above all else. Because the crown is no longer the prize, the boy is. Edward of Westminster grows up in a world that does not allow childhood. He learns quickly, too quickly. The sound of marching boots, the meaning of a raised banner, the weight of being watched. He is not just a prince, he is a claim. And claims invite challengers. Across the battlefield, those challengers gather. Names that once lived quietly in council halls now ride at the front of armies. Men who have decided that England needs something stronger, something steadier, something that does not fracture under pressure. And at the center of that belief, a rival line, a rival future. The fighting sharpens. Battles no longer test strength, they decide it. You feel it in the air before each clash, that strange stillness, the kind that settles just before everything breaks. Then, noise, steel, hooves, shouts swallowed by the chaos of men colliding with men who used to be allies, friends, family. There is no distance anymore, no safe place to stand and observe. Margaret is in it now, fully. You catch glimpses of her between moments of violence, a command shouted across the field, a signal given at the exact second it matters, a decision made before hesitation can kill it. She is not reacting anymore, she is driving it. And for a time, it works. Victory comes again. Hard fought, blood earned. For a brief moment, the balance tips back in her favor. The crown feels reachable again. The future, his future, feels like something she can still protect. But war does not stay tilted for long. The shift comes quietly, like all the worst ones do. An ally falters, a position weakens, a message arrives that should have come sooner, and suddenly, the ground beneath her is no longer steady. You can feel it in the way the army moves, not broken, not yet, but strained, like something holding together by will alone. And then, it snaps. The final battles do not feel like the earlier ones. There is no testing, no probing, only force, only decision, only the understanding that this is not about winning anymore. This is about ending it. Margaret stands at the edge of it, watching the lines form, knowing in that quiet, certain way that this is the moment everything she has fought for
will either hold or be taken from her. She does not step back, because there is nowhere left to step. The clash is brutal, fast, unforgiving, the kind of battle that does not leave room for recovery. And in the chaos, in the noise and the confusion and the collapse of everything she built, the thing she feared most finally finds her. Her son, the prince, the future, the reason she fought at all, gone. The world does not stop. That's the cruelest part. It does not pause to mark the moment. It does not soften the blow. The war keeps moving, grinding forward, carrying everything with it, including her. But something inside her stops. Not her body, not her will. Those keep going because they have to. But something deeper, something that had carried her through every decision, every risk, every impossible choice, falls silent. Because there is no strategy left for this, no alliance that can fix it, no victory that can return what has been taken. And suddenly, the war is no longer hers to win. She is captured. Not in some grand cinematic moment, but in the quiet aftermath, the kind that follows when everything has already been decided. The queen who commanded armies, who held a kingdom together through sheer force of will, who refused to be pushed aside when the world told her to stay quiet, is led away. And England moves on, as it always does. But history does not forget her. Because long after the banners fall, long after the names of kings blur together, one image remains. A woman who stepped into a broken kingdom and refused to let it fall without a fight. They will call her many things: too ambitious, too ruthless, too loud for the role she was given. But those are the names given by people who needed her to be smaller, quieter, easier to control. She was none of those things. She was something far more difficult to dismiss. She was necessary. Because when the crown began to slip, when the men around it hesitated, when the kingdom itself started to fracture, she did not wait to be told what to do. She stepped forward, and for a time, she held it all together. And that is not something history can quietly erase.
And yet, history always tries. It softens her edges, calls her difficult instead of decisive, emotional instead of strategic, dangerous instead of necessary. It takes a woman who stood in the center of a collapsing kingdom and tries to fold her back into the margins. But you've seen her now. You've stood in the mud with her armies, felt the weight of every decision she carried, watched her choose action when silence would have been safer. You know better. So we leave her here, not in defeat, not in silence, but in that moment, just before everything broke, when she was still standing, still fighting, still refusing to let the world decide her place. If you felt the steel in her spine and the fire behind her crown, don't let her story fade into the quiet corners of history. History is full of women who did not wait to be chosen, who stepped forward when power faltered and held it together with nothing but will. Subscribe as we continue to uncover the lives of the dark heroines. Next time, we leave the battlefields of England behind and step into a world of silk, power, and dangerous marriages. A young woman inherits more land than most kings. She marries a king and then another. She births empires and helps tear them apart. She doesn't just survive power, she reshapes it. Next time, Eleanor of Aquitaine, the woman who married 2 kings and ruled them both. Stay dangerous, stay loud.